Okay, I want to do a couple readings. I'm not sure what I'm going to do first. I'm waiting for my beautiful people to come on, and I want to go from. I'm going to read a couple things that are going to be disjointed, a little disjointed, but very wise. That you may. So I'm just going to wait for people to jump on. Hey Jen, it's good to see you. Wow, thank you. It's a fairy tale, okay? There's a couple things I can read. So one of them that I love is from Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, okay? So I'm going to read some disjointed things, meaning not in linear, comment on dit, order, okay? But I'm going to read from The Prophet first, and then we'll read some other things from Good Morning from London. And then we'll read from other things, okay? So let me start. I'm going to start now, okay? So again, this is from The Prophet by Gibran. Then said Al-Mitra, speak to us of love. And he raised his head and looked upon the people, and there fell a stillness upon them. And with a great voice he said, when love beckons to you, follow him, though his ways are hard and steep. And when his wings enfold you, yield to him. And though the sword hidden among his pinions may wound you, and when he speaks to you, believe in him. And though his voice may chatter your dreams, as the north wind lays waste the gardens, for even as love crowns you shall be, he crucify you. Even as he is for your growth, so he is for your pruning. Even as he ascends to your height and caresses your tenderest branches that quiver in the sun, so shall he descend to your roots and shake them in their clinging to the earth. Like sheaves of corn, he gathers you unto himself. He threshes you to make you naked. He sifts you to free you from your husks. He grinds you to the whiteness. He kneads you until you are pliant. And then he assigns you to his sacred fire, that you may become sacred bread for God's sacred feast. All these things shall love do unto you, that you may know the secrets of your heart, and in that knowledge become a fragment of life's heart. But if in fear you would seek only love's peace and love's pleasure, then it is better for you that you cover your nakedness and pass out of love's threshing floor into the seasonless world, where you shall laugh, but not all of your laughter, and weep, but not all of your tears. Love gives not but itself, and takes not but from itself. Love possesses not, nor would it be possessed, for love is sufficient unto love. When you love, you should not say, God is in my heart, but rather, I am in the heart of God. And think not you can direct the course of love, for love, if it finds you worthy, directs your course. Love has no other desire but to fulfill itself. But if you love and must needs have desires, let these be your desires, to melt and be like a running brook that sings its melody to the night, to know the pain of too much tenderness, to be wounded by your own understanding of love, and to bleed willingly and joyfully, to wake at dawn with a winged heart and give thanks for another day of loving, to rest at the noon hour and meditate love's ecstasy, to return home at evening time with gratitude, and then to sleep with a prayer for the beloved in your heart and a song of praise upon your lips. And then Amiltra spoke again and said, and what of marriage, master? And he answered, saying, you were born together, and together you shall forevermore. You shall be together when the white wings of death scatter your days. Aye, you shall be together even in the silent memory of God. But let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you. Love another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from one cup. Give one another of your bread, but eat not from the safe loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone, even as the strings of a lute are alone, and though they quiver with the same music. Give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping, for only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near together, for the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadows. And a woman said, who held a babe against her bosom, said, Speak to us of children. And he said, Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you can never visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward, but tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children are living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swiftly and far. Yet your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. Then a rich man, Speak to us of giving. And he answered, You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. For what are your possessions but things you keep and guard for fear you may need them tomorrow? And tomorrow, what shall tomorrow bring to the overprudent dog bearing bones in the trackless sands as he follows the pilgrims to the holy city? And what is fear of need but need itself? Is it not dread of thirst when your well is full, that thirst that is unquenchable? There are those who give little of the much which they have, and they give it for recognition, and their hidden desire makes their gifts unwholesome. And there are those who have little and give it all. There are the believers in life and the bounty of life, and their coffer is never empty. There are those who give with joy, and that joy is their reward. And there are those who give with pain, and that pain is their baptism. And there are those who give and know not pain in giving, nor do they seek joy, nor do they give with mindfulness of virtue. They give as in yonder valley, the myrtle breathes its fragrance into space. Through the hands of such as these, God speaks, and from beyond their eyes, he smiles upon the earth. It is well to give when asked, but it is better to give unasked, through understanding. And so the open-handed, the search for one who shall receive is joy greater than giving. And is there aught you would withhold? All you have shall someday be given. Therefore give now. That is the season of giving. May be yours and not your inheritors. You often say, I shall give, but only to the deserving. The trees in your orchard say, not so. Not the flocks in your pasture. They give that they live, for so withhold is to perish. Surely he who is worthy to receive his days and his nights is worthy of all else from you. And he who has deserved to drink from the ocean of life deserves to fill his cup from your little stream. And what desert greater shall there be than that which lies in the courage and the confidence, nigh the charity of receiving? And who are you that men should rend their bosom and unveil their pride, that you may see their worth naked and their pride unabashed? See first that you shall yourself be deserved, a giver and an instrument of giving. For who in truth it is life that gives unto life, which you who deem yourself a giver are but a witness. And you receivers, and you are all receivers, assume no weight of gratitude, lest you lay a yoke upon yourself and upon him who gives. Rather rise together with the giver on his gift as his wings. For to be over mindful of your debt is to doubt his generosity, who has the free-hearted earth for mother and God for father. And then an old man A keeper of an inn said, "Speak to us of eating and drinking." And he said, "Would that you would live on the fragrance of the earth, and like an air plant be sustained by light. But since you must kill to eat and rob the newly born of its mother's milk to quench your thirst, let it then be an act of worship. And let your board stand an altar on which the pure and the innocent of forest and plain are sacrificed for that which is pure and still more innocent in man. When you kill a beast, say to him in your heart, by the same power that slays you, I too am slain, and I too shall be consumed. For the law that delivered you unto my hand shall deliver me into a mightier hand. Your blood and my blood is not but the sap that feeds the tree of heaven. And when you crush an apple with your teeth, say it to you in your heart, your seed shall live in my body. And the buds of your tomorrow shall blossom in my heart, and your fragrance shall be my breath, and together we shall rejoice through all the seasons. And in the autumn, when you gather the grapes of your vineyards for the winepress, say in your heart, I too am a vineyard, and my fruit shall be gathered for the winepress, and like a new wine I shall be kept in eternal vessels. And in winter, when you draw the wine, let there be in your heart a song for each cup. And let there be in the song a remembrance for the autumn days, and for the vineyard, and for the winepress. And then a plowman said, Speak to us of work. And he answered, saying, Your work, that you may keep pace with the earth and the soul of the earth. For to be idle is to become a stranger unto the seasons, and to step out of life's possessions that marches in majesty and proud submission towards the infinite. When you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the hours turn to music. Which of you would be a reed, dumb and silent, when all else sings together in unison? Always you have been told that work is a curse and a labor of misfortune. But I say to you that when you work, you fulfill a part of earth's furthest dream, assigned to you when the dream was born. And in keeping yourself with labor, you are in truth loving life. And to love life through labor is to be intimate with life's innermost secret. But if you in your pain call birth an affliction, and the so poured of the flesh a curse written upon your brow, then I answer that not but the sweat of your brow shall wash away that which is written. You have been told also that life is darkness, and that in your weariness you echo what was by the weary. And I say that life is indeed darkness, save when there is urge, and all urge is blind, save when there is knowledge. And all knowledge is vain, save when there is work. And all work is empty, save when there is love. And when you work with love, you bind yourself to yourself and to one another and to God. And what is work without love? Is it to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even if your beloved were to wear that cloth? Is it to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house? Is it to sow seed with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even if your beloved were to eat the fruit? Is it to charge all things your fashion with the breath of your own spirit, and to know that all the blessed dead are standing about you and watching? Often I have heard you say, as if speaking in sleep, he who works in marble and finds the shape of his own soul in the stream and the stone is nobler than that who plows the soil. And he who seizes the rainbow to lay it on a cloth in the likeness of man is more than he who makes the sandals for our feet. But I say not in sleep, but in the over wakefulness of noontide, that the wind speaks no more sweetly to the giant oaks than to the least of all blades of grass. And he who loans is great, who turns the voice of the wind into a song made sweeter by his own loving. Work is love made visible. And if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of those who work with joy. For if you bake bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds but half a man's hunger. And if you grudge the crushing of the grapes, you grudge the distills of poison in the wine. And if you sing through as angels and love not the singing, you muffle man's ears, so the voices of the day and the voices of the night. Then a woman said, "Speak to us of joy and sorrow." And he answered, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the selfsame well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? Is it not the lute that soothes your spirit, the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. In their fear, your forefathers gathered you too near together, and the fear shall endure a little longer. A little longer shall your city walls separate your earth from your fields. And tell me, people of Pharisees, what have you in these houses? What is that you guard with fastened doors? Have you peace, the quiet urge that reveals your power? Have you remembrance, the glimmering arches that span the summit of the mind? Have you beauty that leads the heart from things fashioned of wood and stone in the holy mountains? Tell me, have you there in your houses, or have you only comfort and the lust for comfort, that stealthy things that enter the house a guest and becomes a host and then a master? Aye, it becomes a tamer, which hook and scourge makes puppets of your larger desires. And though its hands are silken, its heart is of iron. It lulls you to sleep only to stand by your bed and jeer at the dignity of the flesh. It mocks you of your sound senses and lays them in thistledowns like fragile vessels. Warily, the lust for comfort murders the passion of the soul and then walks grinning in the funeral. But you, children of space, your restlessness, you rest. You shall not be trapped nor tamed. Your house shall not be an anchor but a mast. It shall not be the glistening film that covers a wound but an eyelid that guards the eye. You shall not fold your wings that you may pass through doors, nor bend your heads that they strike not against a sailing, nor fear to breathe lest walls should crack and fall down. You shall not dwell in tombs made by the dead for the living, and though of magnificence and splendor, your home shall not hold your secret, nor shelter your longing. For that which is boundless in your abides, in the mansion of the sky, those whose door is the morning mist, and whose windows are the songs and the silence of night. Let me get another one. Speak to us of crime and punishment. He answered, saying, It is when your spirit goes wandering upon the wind that you alone and unguarded commit a wrong unto others and therefore unto yourself. And for that wrong commitment must you knock and wait a while unheeded at the gate of the blessed. Like the ocean is your God self, it remains forever undefiled. And like a heavers, it lifts but the winged, and even like the sun is your God self. It knows not the ways of the mole, nor seeks it in the holes of the serpent. But if your God self dwells not alone in your being, must in you still be man, and much you is not yet man. But a shapeless pygmy that walks asleep in the mist, searching for its own awakening, and of the man in you would I now speak, for it is he and not your God self, nor the pygmy in the mist that knows crime and the punishment of crime. Oftentimes I have heard you speak of one who commits a wrong, as though he were not one of you, but a stranger unto you and an intruder upon your world. But I say that even as the holy and the righteous cannot rise beyond the highest which is in each of you, so the wicked and the weak cannot fall lower than the lowest which is in you also. And as a single leaf turns not yellow, but with the silent knowledge of the whole tree, so the wrongdoer cannot do wrong without the hidden will of you all. Like a procession, you walk together towards your God self. You are the way and the wayfarers. And when one of you falls, down he falls. For those behind him, a caution against the stumbling stone. Aye, and he falls for those ahead of him. For though faster and surer foot, you are removed, not the stumbling stone. And this also, though the word lie heavy upon your hearts, the murdered is not unaccountable for his own murder, and the robbed is not blameless in being robbed, and the righteous is not innocent of the deeds of the wicked, and the white-handed is not clean in the doings of the felon. Aye, the guilty is oftentimes the victim of the injured, and still more oftentimes the condemned is the burden-bearer for the guiltless and the unblamed. You cannot separate the just from the unjust and the good from the wicked, for they stand together before the face of the sun, even as the black thread and the white are woven together. And when the black thread breaks, the weaver shall look into the whole cloth, and he shall examine the loom also. If any of you would bring to judgment the unfaithful wife, let him also weigh the heart of her husband in scales and measure his soul with measurements. And let him who would lash the offender look into the spirit of the offended. And if any of you would punish in the name of righteousness and lay the axe unto the evil tree, let him see to its roots. And verily he will find the roots of the good and the bad and the fruitful and the fruitless all intertwined together in the heart of the earth. And you judges who would be just, what judgment pronounce you upon him who thou honest in the flesh, yet is a thief in spirit? What penalty lay you upon him who slays in the flesh, yet is himself slain in the spirit? And how prosecute you him who in action is a deceiver and an oppressor, yet who is also grieved and outraged? And how shall you punish those whose remorse is already greater than their misdeeds? Is not remorse the justice from which is administered by that very law which you would fain serve? Yet you cannot lay remorse upon the innocent, nor lift it from the heart of the guilty. Unbidden shall it call in the night, that man may wake and gaze upon themselves. And you shall, who would understand justice, how shall you unless you look upon all deeds in the fullness of light? Only then shall you know that the erect and the fallen are but one man standing in twilight between the night of his small self and the day of his good God self. And that is the cornerstone of the temple is not higher than the lowest stone in its foundation. Wow. What is law? And he answered, you delight in laying down laws, yet you delight more in breaking them, like children playing by the ocean who build sand towers with consistency and then destroy them with laughter. But while you build your sand towers, the ocean brings more sand to the shores. And when you destroy them, the ocean laughs with you. Verily, the ocean laughs always with the innocent. But what of those whom to life is not an ocean, and man-made laws are not sand towers, but to whom life is a rock and the law a chisel from which they carve it in their own likeness? What of the cripple who hates dancers? What of the ox who loves his yoke, deems the elk and deer of the forest stray and vagrant things? What of the old serpent who cannot shed his skin and calls all other naked and shameless? And of him who comes early to the wedding feast, when overfed and tired goes his way, saying that all feasts are violations and all feasters lawbreakers? What shall I say of these, save that they too stand in the sunlight with their backs to the sun? They see only their shadows, and their shadows are their laws. And what is the sun to them but a caster of shadows? And what it is to acknowledge the laws but to stoop down and trace their shadows upon the earth? But who you walk beside the sun, that image is drawn on the earth can hold you. You who travel with the wind, what weather vane shall direct your course? What man's law shall bind you if you break your yoke, but upon no man's prison door? What laws shall you fear if you dance, but stumble against no man's iron chain? And who is he that shall bring you to judgment if you tear off your garment, yet leave it at no man's path? People of Ophelices, you can muffle the drum, and you can loosen the strings of the lyre, but who shall condemn the scar-like not to sing? So, any feedback on this beautiful man's work? Any feedback on this beautiful, beautiful man's work? No? Shall I continue? Or shall I read from something else? Hi, all this live is not the question on current love situations. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for saying that. Okay. Any questions on that? Continue. Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Let me go right into... oh, this is beautiful. And so a poet said, "Speak to us of beauty." And he answered, "Where shall you seek beauty? And how shall you find her unless she herself be your way and your guide? And how shall you speak of her except she be the weaver of your speech?" And the aggrieved and the injured say, "Beauty is kind and gentle, like a young mother half shy of her own glory. She walks among us." And the passionate say, "Nay, beauty is a thing of might and dread. Like the tempest, she shakes the earth beneath us and the sky above us." The tired and the weary say, "Beauty is of soft whispering. She speaks in our spirit. Her voice yields to our silence like a faint light that quivers in fear of the shadows." But the restless say, "We have heard of her shouting among the mountains, and with her cries came the sound of hoofs and the beating of wings and the roaring of lions." At night, the watchmen of the city say, "Beauty shall rise with the dawn from the east." And at noontide the toilers and the wayfarers say, "We have seen her leaning over the earth from the window of the sunset." And in winter, say the snowbound, "She shall come with the spring leaping upon the hills." And in the summer heat, the reapers say, "We have seen her dancing with the autumn leaves, and we saw a drift of snow in her hair." And all these things have you said of beauty, yet in truth you spoke not of her, but of needs unsatisfied. And beauty is not a need, but an ecstasy. It is not a mouth thirsting, nor an empty hand stretched forth, but rather a heart inflamed and a soul enchanted. It is not the image you would see, nor the song you would hear, but rather an image you see though you close your eyes, and a song you hear though you shut your ears. It is not the sap within the furrowed bark, nor a wing attached to a claw, but rather a garden forever bloom, a flock of angels forever in flight. People or Felices, beauty is life, when life unveils her holy face. But you are life, and you are the veil. Beauty is eternity gazing at itself in a mirror, but you are eternity, and you are the mirror. And an old priest said, "Speak to us of religion." And he said, "Have I spoken this day of aught else? Is not religion all deeds and all reflections of that which is neither deed nor reflection, but a wonder and a surprise ever springing in the soul, even while the hands hew the stone or tend the loom? Who can separate his faith from his actions, or his belief from his occupation? Who can spread his hours before him, saying, 'This is for God, and this is for myself, and this is for my soul, and this other for my body'? All your hours are wings that beat through space for self to self. He who wears his morality, but at his best garment, were better naked. The wind and the sun will tear no holes in his skin, and he who defines his conducts by ethics imprisons his songbird in a cage. The freest song comes not through bars and wires, and he to whom worshiping is a window to open but also to shut has not yet visited the house of his soul, whose windows are from dawn to dawn. Your daily life is your temple and your religion. Whenever you enter into it, take with you your all. Take the plow and the forge and the mallet and the lute and the things you have fashioned in necessity or for delight. And for every reverie you cannot rise above your achievement, nor fall lower than your failures. And take with you all men. For in adoration you cannot fly higher than their hopes, nor humble yourself lower than the despair. And if you would know God, he is not therefore a solver of riddles. Rather look about you, and you shall see him playing with your children. And look into your space, you shall see him walking in the clouds, outstretching his arms in the lightning and descending in rain. You shall see him smiling in flowers and rising and waving his hands in trees. Then Almitra spoke, saying, "We would ask now of death." And he said, "You would know the secrets of death? But how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl, whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day, cannot unveil the mystery of light. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life, for life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond, and like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate of eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king, whose hand is to be laid upon him in honor. It is the shepherd, not joyful beneath his trembling, that he shall wear the mark of the king, and yet is he not more mindful of his trembling? For what it is to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun, and for what is to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and see God unencumbered. Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountaintop, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then you shall truly dance. Wow. That is probably the most beautiful thing I've ever read on death. And the truest. And it's funny. Every time I read that particular passage, I cry. Because it is so filled with truth. This is from the Prophet, Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. This is a book I've always given to people expecting babies, because one should always have a handbook to life, and this is probably the most extraordinary handbook I've ever read on life. I mean, if there's to be a handbook, let it be The Prophet. There's more, of course, but it's a small book, and you want to get the version where you have his drawings. And it's based on Yeshua, guys. I don't know if you guys know that, but it's based on, he changed the names, right? But it's based on Yeshua coming back home to the land, right? And let me see. I will read some more if you'd like. Would you like me to continue or read something else? Should I read something else? It's like one of the best things ever written on I mean, I think. The only other person that writes as beautiful as him was Arthur Rimbaud, which I couldn't find. Continue? Okay. All right. Okay, so let me see the end. I'm going to see the end of the last. That was actually the last before he speaks. Okay. Okay, so let's go. This is the end, and then I'll start the beginning, believe it or not. And now it was evening, and Almitra, the seer, said, "Blessed be this day and this place in your spirit that has spoken." And he answered, "Was it I who spoke? Was I not also a listener?" Then he descended upon the steps of the temple, and all the people followed him. And he reached his ship and stood upon the deck, and facing the people again he raised his voice and said, "People or Pharisees, the wind bids me leave you. Less hasty I am than the wind, yet I must go. We wanderers, ever seeking the lonelier way, begin no day where we have ended another day, and no sunrise finds us where sunset left us. And even while the earth sleeps, we travel. We are the seeds of the tenacious plant, and it is our ripeness and our fullness of heart that we are given to the wind and are scattered. Brief were my days among you, and briefer still the words I have spoken. But should my voice fade in your ears, and my love vanish in your memory, then I will come again, and with a richer Hearing and lips more yielding to the Spirit will I speak. Yea, I shall return with the tide, and though death may hide me, and the greater silence enfold me, yet again will I seek your understanding. And not in vain will I seek, if aught I have said is truth, that truth shall reveal itself in a clearer voice, and in words more kin to your thoughts. I go with the wind, people or fallacies, but not down into emptiness. And if this day is not a fulfillment of your needs and my love, then let it be a promise till another day. Man's needs change, but not his love, not his desires, that his love should satisfy his needs. Know, therefore, that from the greatest silence I shall return. The mist that drifts away at dawn, leaving but dew in the fields, shall rise and gather into a cloud, and then fall down in rains. Not unlike the mists I have been. In the stillness of the light, I have walked in your streets, and my spirit has entered your houses, and your heart beats where my heart, and your breath was upon my face, and I knew you all. Aye, I knew your joy and your pain. In your sleep, your dreams were my dreams, and oftentimes I was among you, a lake among the mountains. I mirrored the summit in you, and the bending slopes of even the passing flocks of your thoughts and your desires. And to my silence came the laughter of your children in streams, and the longing of your youth in rivers. And when they reached my depth, the stream and the rivers ceased not yet to sing, but sweeter still laughter and greater than longing came to me. It was the boundless in you, the vast man in whom you are all but cells and sinew, and in whose chant all your singing is but a soundless throbbing. It is in the vast man that you are vast, and in beholding him that I beheld you and I loved you. For what distances can I love reach that you are now in the vast sphere? What visions, what expectations, what presumptions can outsoar that flight? Like a giant oak tree covered with apple blossom is the vast man in you. His might binds you to the earth. His fragrance lifts you into space, and in his durability you are deathless. You have been told that even like a chain you are weak as your weakest link. This is but a half-truth. You are also as strong as your strongest link. To measure you by your smallest deed is to reckon the power of ocean by the frailty of its foam. To judge you by your failure is to cast blame upon the seasons for their inconsistency. Aye, you are like an ocean, and though heavy grounded ships await the tide upon your shores, yet even like an ocean you cannot hasten your tides, and like the seasons you are also, and though in your winter you deny your spring, yet your spring reposing within your smiles in her drowsiness and is not offended. Think not I say these things in order that you may say the ones to the other, he praised us well, he saw but the good in us. I only speak to you in words of that which you yourselves know in thought. And what is word, knowledge, but a shadow of wordless knowledge? Your thoughts and my words are waves from a sealed memory that keep record of our yesterdays and of the ancient days when the earth knew not us nor herself, and of nights when earth was upwrought with confusion. Wise men came to you to give you of their vision. I came to take of your wisdoms, and behold, I have found that which is greater than wisdom. It is a flame spirit in you, ever gathering more of itself. While you, heedless of its expansion, bewail the withering of your days, it is life in quest of life in bodies that fear the grave. There are no graves here. These are mountains, and plains are a cradle and a stepping stone. Whenever you pass by the field where you have laid your ancestors, look well thereupon, and you should see yourself and your children dancing hand in hand. Rarely you often make merry without knowing. Others has come to you, to whom for golden promise made unto your faith you have given but riches and power and glory. Less than a promise I have given, and yet more generous have you been to me. You have given me my deeper thirsting after life. Surely there's no greater gift to a man than that which turns all his aims into parching lips and all life into a fountain. And all this lies my honor and my reward, that whenever I come to the fountain to drink, I find the living water itself thirsty, and it drinks me while I drink it. Some of you have deemed me proud and overshy to receive gifts, too proud indeed, and I am receiving wages but not gifts. And though I have eaten berries among the hills, when you would have had me sit at your board, and slept in the porticos of the temple, when you would have gladly sheltered me, yet was it not your loving mindfulness of my days and my nights that made food sweet to my mouth and girdled my sleep with visions? For this I bless you most. You give me much, and know not that you have given at all. Warily, the kindness that gazes upon itself in a mirror turns to stone, and a good deed that calls itself by tender names becomes the parent to a curse. And some of you have called me aloof and drunk with my own aloneness, and you have said, he holds counsel with the trees of the forest, but not with man. He sits alone on hilltops and looks down upon our city. True it is that I've climbed the hills and walked in remote places. How could I have seen you save from a great height or a great distance? How can one be indeed near unless he is far? And others among you called upon me, not in words, but said, stranger, stranger, lover, unreachable heights, why dwell among those summits where eagles build their nest? Why seek you in the unattainable? What storms would you trap in your net? And what vaporous birds do you hunt in the sky? Come and be one of us. Descend and appease your hunger with our bread and quench your thirst with our wine. In the solitude of their souls they said these things. But were their solitude deeper, they would have known that I sought but the secrets of your joy and your pain. And I hunted only your larger selves that walks in the sky. But the hunter was also the hunted. For many of my arrows left my body only to seek my own breast, and the flyer was also the creeper. For when my wings were spread in the sun, their shadows upon the earth was a turtle, and I believe the believer was also the doubter. For often I have put my finger in my own wound, that I might have the greatest belief in you, and the greater knowledge of you. And it is with this belief and this knowledge that I say, you are not enclosed within your bodies, nor confined to the houses or field, that which is you dwell above the mountains and rose with the wind. It is not a thing that crawls into the sun for warmth, or dig holes into darkness for safety, but a thing free, a spirit that envelops the earth and moves in the heather. If this be vague words, then seek not to clear them. Vague and nebulous at the beginning of all things, but not in their end. And I fain would you have me remember as a beginning. Life and all that lives is conceived in the mist and not in the crystal. And who knows but a crystal is a mist and decay? This would have been you remember in remembering me. That which seems most feeble and bewildered in you is the strongest and most determined. It is not your breath that has erected and hardened the structures of your houses. It is not a dream, which none of you remember having dreams, that built your city and fashioned all of this. Could you but see the tide of that breath, would you cease to see all else? And if you could hear the whispering of the dream, you would hear no other sound. But you do not see, nor do you hear, and it is well. The veil that clouds your eyes shall be lifted by the hands that wove it, and the clay that fills your ears shall be pierced by those fingers that kneaded it. And you shall see, and you shall hear, yet you shall not deplore having known blindness, nor regret having been deaf. For in that day you shall know the hidden purpose in all things, and you shall bless darkness as you would bless light. After saying these things, he looked about him, and he saw the pilot of his ship standing by the helm and gazing now at the full sails and now at the distance. And he said, "Patient, over patient is the captain of my ship. The wind blows, and restless are the sails. Even the rudder begs directions, yet quietly my captain awaits my silence. And these, my mariners, who have heard the choir of the greater sea, they too have heard me patiently. Now they shall wait no longer. I am ready. The stream has reached the sea, and once more the great mother holds her son against her breast. Fare you well, people of Opharlices. This day is ended. It is closing upon us even as the water lily upon its own tomorrow. What was given us here we shall keep. And if it is suffice not, then again must we come together, and together stretch our hands unto the givers. Forget not that I shall come back to you. A little while, and my longing shall gather dust and foam for another body. A little while, a moment of rest upon the wind, and another woman shall bear me. Farewell to you, and to the youth I have spent with you. It was but yesterday we met in a dream. You have sung to me in my aloneness, and I of your longing have built a tower in the sky. But now our sleep has fled, and our dream is over, and it is no longer dawn. The noontide is upon us, and our half-waking has turned to fuller day, and we must part. If in the twilight of your memory we should meet once more, we shall speak again together, and you shall sing to me a deeper song. And if our hands should we meet in another dream, we shall build another tower in the sky. So saying, he made a signal to the seamen, and straightway they weighed anchor and cast the ship loose from its moorings, and they moved eastward. And a cry came from the people as far from a single heart, and it rose into the dusk and was carried out over the sea like a great trumpeting. Only our Mitra was silent, gazing after the ship until it had vanished into the mist. And when all the people were dispersed, she still stood alone upon the sea wall, remembering in her heart his saying, a little while, a moment of rest upon the wind, and another woman shall bear me. I have no words. It's a book you should read to yourself, you know. It's a book you should read to your beloved. It's a book every person on the planet should have in their library. It is the most important handbook to life that I've ever... It's like when I got married to my husband, on marriage was our vow. And a lot of people use that as a vow of marriage. I'm going to read to you from the Women Who Run with the Wolves. And I'm going to be reading to you about frozen. Hang on, let me see. I want to make sure, because it's something about not belonging. And it's based on the Ugly Duckling story. Because Women Who Run with the Wolves is about... It's written by Clarissa Estes, and she's a Jungian. She's a Carl Jung psychologist, and she's amazing. And she's written this book. The book that I just read was The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, and the next book that I'm reading is Women Who Run with the Wolves. So I'm going to look and see, because every story in this book is unbelievable, okay? So she takes stories like this. Let me give you an example. Like the story of Bluebeard, the story of the skeleton woman, the story of the ugly duckling, okay? The ugly duckling. And I'm going to read you a passage from the ugly duckling, which is called Exile as a Boon. Exile as a Boon, okay? So let me see if I can find it. So 166, hang on for a quick second, because I think we should read it, because I personally don't remember it. My favorite story that she's written, that she rewrote or re-explained, is The Red Shoes. The Ugly Duckling, hang on. Let me read okay. Maybe, do you guys want me to read the whole thing, or do you want me to read Exile as a Boon? Because sometimes... Let me look at this, because it talks about the ambivalent mother. It's really pretty fucking powerful shit. I mean, I'm not kidding. Let me see if I can, here we go. Exile as a boon. I'm going to start with that, okay? All right. If you have attempted to fix whatever mold and failed to do so, you are probably lucky. You may be in exile of some sort, but you have sheltered your soul. There's an odd phenomena that happens when one keeps trying to fit and fails. Even though the outcast is driven away, she is, or he is, at the same time driven right into the arms of her psychic and true kin, whether these be a course of study, an art form, or a group of people. It is worse to stay where one does not belong at all than to wander about lost for a while and looking for the psychic and soulful kingship one requires. It is never a mistake to search for what one requires. Never. There is something useful in all this torque and tension. Something in the duckling is being tempered, being strong by this exile. While this situation is not one who would wish on anyone for any reason, its effect is similar to pure natural carbon under pressure producing diamonds. It leads eventually to profound magnitude and clarity of psyche. There is an aspect of alchemy where the base substance of lead is pounded about and beaten down. While exile is not a thing to desire for the fun of it, there is an unexpected gain from it. The gifts of the exiles are many. It takes out weakness by the pounding. It removes whininess, enables acute insight, heightens intuition, grants the power of keen observation and perspective that the insider can never achieve. Even though there are negative aspects to it, the wild psyche can endure exile. It makes us yearn that much more to free our own true nature and causes us to long for a culture that goes with it. Wow. Even this yearning, this longing, makes a person go on. It makes a woman go on looking, or a man. And if she cannot find the culture that encourages her, then she usually decides to construct it herself. And that is good. For if she builds it, others who have been looking for a long time will mysteriously arrive one day, enthusiastically proclaiming that they have been looking for this all along. It's like, yeah, build it and they shall come. Build it and they shall come. That's definitely it, right? And that's what you have to understand as exile as a boon, right? Exile as a boon. I thought that was pretty damn awesome. Because there's this feeling of discontent in being in exile, which is normal, of course. You know, it's freaking exile, for Christ's sakes. It's exhausting. It's lonely. And you feel completely bereft. Like you're out in the ocean without a sail, without a paddle, without nothing. And when you realize that you are being initiated into stronger power, into becoming probably a leader, right? Or a healer, organizer of energies. Once you realize that the exile as a boon is part of that initiation, then it no longer becomes a tragic loss to you. It becomes a rite of passage. It now becomes a journey, a path to the end goal. And so quite often clients come to me saying, I don't know where my mission is. I don't know what my mission is. And your mission, first you got to go through this, the dark night of the soul, exile as a boon, right? And then you are like a sword beaten on the anvil of life. And you are reshaped, reformed. The pressure is on. And the sad part is if you're not surrounded by at least one other like-minded soul like you, you might not have the strength to make it out the other side. And yeah, it resonates with you, I bet. I bet it does. And so, yeah. Let me go on to something else here. So this was good. Hang on, okay? Because this is really good. Okay, listen to this. This is great. The ugly duckling, right? We impose exile on ourselves when we go through our awakening. This resonated. Yes, yes. So listen to this. Bad company. Listen to this, guys. The ugly duckling goes from pillar to post trying to find a place to be at rest. While the instinct about exactly where to go may not be fully developed. The instinct to rove until one finds what needs is well intact. Yet there's a kind of pathology sometimes in the ugly duckling syndrome. One keeps knocking at the wrong doors even after one knows better. It is hard to imagine how a person is supposed to know which door are right doors if one has never known a right door to begin with. However, the wrong doors are those that cause you to feel the outcast all over again. This is the looking for love in all the wrong places response to exile. When a woman or a man turns to repetitive compulsive behavior, repeating over and over again a behavior that is not fulfilling, that causes decline instead of sustained vitality. In order to solve her exile, she is actually causing more damage because the original wounded state is not being attended to, and she incurs new wounding with each foray. This is like putting some puny medicine on your nose when you have a gash in your arm. Different women or men choose different kinds of wrong medicine. Some choose the obviously wrong, such as a bad company, overindulgence that are harmful, or soul stealing. Things that first built a woman or man way up and then tear her or him down to the ground, 0 - 5. The solution to these bad choices are severalfold. If the man or woman were able to sit themselves down and peer into their own heart, he would see that there is a need to have their talents, their gifts, and their limitations respectfully acknowledged and accepted. So to begin healing, stop kidding yourself that a little feel-good of the wrong sort will take care of a broken leg. Tell the truth about your wound, and then you will get a truthful picture of the remedy to apply to it. Don't pack whatever is easiest or most available into the emptiness. Hold out for the right medicine. You will recognize it because it makes your life stronger rather than weaker. Pretty intense, isn't it? So a lot of people do that. They go for bad company because that bad company wasn't bad when they were at a certain level of energy. You know, their vibration was at a different vibrational pull. There was no awakeness. They were entrenched in 3D consciousness. And that was not bad company then, right? Maybe they were partying, drinking, taking drugs, whatever, right? But now that you're going through the ascension and all of these things are happening, now it becomes bad company. And rather than sitting with the pain, many people go back to the bad company thinking that's the answer because it soothed them before. So it should do the work, right? It should soothe them now, but it doesn't. I'm trying to look for... Okay, this is definitely... Just so you guys know, this is a book written for women. And if you've noticed, I've added men and women. But I want to get to... But it is not for women. Because at the end of the day, it's a book every man and woman should read. So, frozen feeling, frozen creativity. Women and men deal with exile in other ways. Like the duckling who becomes frozen in the ice of the pond, they freeze up. Freezing up is the worst thing a person can do. Coldness is the kiss of death to creativity, relationships, life itself. Some men and women act as though it is an achievement to be cold. It is not. It is an act of defensive anger. In archetypal psychology, to be cold is to be without feelings. There are stories of the frozen child, the child who could not feel, the corpses frozen in the ice during which nothing could move, nothing could become, nothing could be born. For a human to be frozen means to be purposely without feelings, especially towards oneself, but also and sometimes even more so towards others. While it is self-protective mechanism, it is hard on the soul psyche, and for the soul does not respond to iciness, but rather with warmth. An icy attitude will put out a woman or man's creative fires. It will inhibit the creative function. This is a serious problem, yet the story gives us an idea. The ice must be broken and the soul take it out of the freezer. When writers, for example, feel dry, they know what the way to become moist is to write. But if you're locked in ice, they won't write. There are painters who are gasping to paint, but they're telling themselves, get out of here. Your work is weirdly strange and ugly. There are many artists who've not yet gotten a good footing, a foothold, or who of who are old war horses at developing their creative lives. And yet still, every time they reach for the pen, the brush, the ribbons, the script, they hear, "You're nothing but trouble. Your word is marginal or completely unacceptable because you yourself are marginal and unacceptable." So what is the solution? Do as the duckling does. Go ahead, struggle through, pick it up the pen already and put it on the page and stop whining. Write, pick up the brush, and be mean to yourself for a change. Paint. Dancers, put on the loose chemise, tie the ribbons in your hair, at your waist or in your ankles, and tell the body to take it from there. Dance. Actresses, playwrights, poets, musicians, or any other. Generally, just stop talking. Don't say another more word unless you're a singer. Shut yourself in a room with a ceiling or in a clearing under the sky. Do your art. Generally, a thing cannot freeze if it is moving. So move. Keep moving. Wow, that's incredible. That's hell of good advice. Because what happens with being frozen as a creative person, and when I say creativity, it encompasses everything. You can live your life creatively and not create art, okay? Let's not confuse that. But when you create art or when you create your life and you are in a state of frozenness, you're in a state of feeling incapable or not being good enough or feeling that people are better off without you, you better stop that inner voice to take hold of you and moving your body in an act and thinking that you're not good enough, whatever that is. I'm not a good enough writer. I'm not a good enough comic creator. I'm not a good enough poet or whatever. What makes the difference between a published writer or published, I'm just going to give you that example, and one that is not their talent. It has nothing to do with talent. It has to do with the fact that the one who was not as talented just wouldn't stop moving. And the one who is probably the most brilliant writer, right? Using that as an example, never submitted their work, ever. Never. So what was left in a drawer is never found or found 20, 30 years later, right? And that's what you have to understand. It's not talent that brings people to a place of recognition. It's movement. And and I'm going to make a joke. Most of the people right now who are famous actors and singers aren't that talented. Okay, let's be honest. Okay, let's be real. All right, a lot of them aren't that talented. Okay, but they never quit. They moved. And the painters that got known never quit. Okay, in fact, some of the painters I know who are not doing don't get me wrong. I love my friends who are painters, but I've seen painters that at least one or two I can think of in the top of my head who painted like Rembrandt. Okay, I'm not kidding, or like Latour, and there's no way to you will not find their work, and the reason why you won't find their work is because they are what? What's the word? What's the word that stops a person creating anything that stops them from actually being known or seen or their work even, because they marginalize the work themselves before anyone else does. They're perfectionists. Blocking the heart chakra, causing sacral dysfunction, create the energy flow. Right on. And that's why working on your chakras is really important. Check out Andromeda Flame on that. She's going to do a series of classes on that. You may want to follow her. So does that make sense so far? So the thing about the understanding of your value is that, and this is really hard for me to understand right now, but I was that person, so I understand it in a visceral way, is that if you were a child that had passions, a certain passion, go back to that passion. Was the passion, I'm not denigrating anyone who does anything, okay? Was your passion to draw? Was your passion to do hair? Was your passion to do architecture where you would draw houses when you were like 8 or 9 and 10, like the blueprint of a house? Were you writing when you were 8 and 9 and 10? Were you in love with that? And the original passion that you first remembered as a child is actually what you were born to do. It could have been music, it could have been sound, or you loving the sound of things. That would be what you need to go back to. And it has nothing to do with being, what's the word I want to say? Trained. Because we have this weird thing that if you're a painter, you need to have a master's degree. Rembrandt didn't have a master's degree. Gauguin didn't have a master's degree. Van Gogh didn't have a master's degree. None of them had any master's degree. They just had a passion. And that should be enough for you. So if you are trying to figure out what you want to do to make you happy, it's not like you can't break the system or break out of the system. I could see how being a painter would have been, or a screenwriter or anything like that in the 70s would have been really hard. But today you've got the internet. You can actually expose yourself to the planet, especially, some presidents don't have masters. So I hope that helps you guys, because today is Christmas Day, right? For many of you, you've crossed over to that time zone. And what would be the greatest Christmas gift you could give yourself is to acknowledge your talents and to acknowledge how to bring that forth in 2024. That probably would be the kindest thing you can do, the most beautiful things you can unwrap within yourself. And to understand that the exile is a boon, and that everything is a boon, right? And that you need to just move into that energy. Does that make sense? Move into that energy and have enough self-respect to know that what you have to offer the world is worthy. And if you don't feel like that, I understand that feeling. However, where does it stem from? And how can we help you remove it? I remember that when I started really being honest about what I was creating, I realized that I was a conduit. And the minute I realized I was a conduit, that was my back door to actually expressing everything. Because at that point, I realized that I was a messenger, a scribe. And it wasn't me creating X, Y, and Z or doing X, Y, and Z. I was just downloading. And that was very, very liberating for me. So you may want to try that trick, because it's a backdoor trick that I kind of found the back door to me getting out of my own way. You see what I'm saying? Can you guys share with me what has stopped you from being who you're supposed to be? Would you mind sharing that with the collective? Is anyone brave enough to share that right now? And gosh, I wish we could actually talk. That would be awesome. Anyone want to share that? That would be brave of you to share. Anybody willing? Anybody willing to share? Okay. You guys are shy. I understand. It can be very triggering. Let me go ahead and see what else I can find from this incredible book, okay? So hang on. And again, this is called Women Who Run with the Wolves. Fear of not belonging and conditioning. Yeah, that's a very good one. Fear of not belonging is a good one. But you already don't belong anyway, so you might as well get some shit done. It's like you don't belong, believe me. You wouldn't be here if you belonged. I'm looking for something to read to you guys, because I think this is good that we read things. Okay. I'm going to read to you, believe it or not, when the heart is a lonely hunter. Hang on, okay? I want to see if I should read this. It's called Skeleton Woman. It's actually based on a fairy tale. All right, I'm going to read this to you, and feel free to co-create with me, okay, on this. Okay, chapter 5, when the heart is a lonely hunter. Skeleton woman facing life, death, life, nature of love. Wolves are good in relationships, Anyone who's observed wolves see how deeply they bond. Mates are more often for life, even though they clash and even though there is dissension, their bonds carry them over and through harsh winters, plentiful springs, long walks, new offsprings, old predators, tribal dances, and group sings. The relations needs of humans are no different. While the instinctual lives of wolves include loyalty and lifelong bonds of trust and devotion, humans sometimes have trouble with these matters. If we were to use archetypal terms to describe what determines the strong bonds among wolves, we might surmise that the integrity of their relationship is derived from their submission to the ancient life-death-life nature. The life-death-life nature is a cycle of animation, development, decline, and death that is always followed by reanimation. This cycle affects all physical life and all facets of psychological life. Everything, the sun, novas, and the moon, as well as the affairs of humans and those of the tiniest creatures like cells and atoms, has this fluttering and then faltering and then fluttering again. Unlike humans, wolves do not deem the ups and downs of life, energy, power, food, opportunity as startling or punitive. The peaks and valleys just are, and wolves ride them as efficiently, as fluidly as possible. The instinctual nature has the miraculous ability to live through all positive boon, all negative consequence, and still maintain relationships to self and to another. Among wolves, the life cycles of nature and fate are met with grace and wit and the endurance to stay tight with one's mate and to live long as well as can be. But in order for humans to live and give loyalty in this most fit manner, in this way which is most wise, most preserving, and most feeling, one has to go up against the very thing one fears most. There is no way around it, as we shall see. One must sleep with Lady Death. Skeleton Woman is a hunting story about love. In wise stories, love is seldom a romantic tryst between two lovers. For instance, stories from the circumpolar regions often describe love as a union of two beings whose strength together enables one or both to enter into communication with the soul world and to participate in fate as a dance with life and death. To understand this story, we have to see that there is in one of the harshness environs and one of the most stress hunting cultures in the world, love does not mean a flirtation or a pursuit for simple ego pleasure, but a visible bond composed of the psychic sinew of endurance and a union which prevails through bounty and austerity, through the most complicated and more simple days and nights. The union of two beings is seen as an Engok magic in itself, as a relationship through which the powers that be become known to both individuals. But there are requirements for this kind of union. In order to create this enduring love, one invites a third partner to the union. The third partner is Skeletal Woman. She is also called Lady Death, and as such she is the life nature in one of her many guises. In this form, Lady Death is not a disease but a deity. In a relationship, she has the role of the oracle who knows when it is time for cycles to begin and end, and as such she is the wildish aspect of relationships, the one of whom men are most terrified, and sometimes women also, for when faith in the transformative has been lost, the natural cycles of increase and attrition are feared as well. To create enduring love, Skeleton Woman must be admitted to the relationship and be embraced by both lovers. Here, in an old Inuit setting, and amplified for a short spokes poem given to me by Mary Ukulak, are the psychic sages from mastery of that embrace. Let us peer at the images from which rise the smoke of this tale. Skeleton Woman. She had done something of which her father disapproved, although no one any longer remembered what it was. But her father had dragged her to the cliffs and thrown her over into the sea, and there the fish ate her flesh away and plucked out her eyes. As she lay under the sea, her skeleton turned over and over in the currents. One day, a fisherman came fishing. Well, and in truth many came to this bay once, but this fisherman had drifted far from his home place and did not know that the local fishermen stayed away, saying this inlet was haunted. The fisherman's hook drifted down through the water and caught in all places in the bones of skeleton woman's ribcage. The fisherman thought, oh, now I've really got a big one. Now I really have one. In his mind, he was thinking of how many people this great fish would feed, and how long it would last, and how long he might be free from the chore of hunting. And as he struggled with this great weight on the end of the hook, the sea was stirred to a thrashing froth, and his kayak bucked and shook, for she who was beneath struggling to disentangle herself. And the more she struggled, the more she tangled up in the line. No matter what she did, she was inexorably dragged upward, tugged up by the bones of her own ribs. The hunter had turned to scoop up his net, so he did not see her bald head rise above the waves. He did not see the little coral creatures glinting in the orbs of her skull. He did not see the crustaceans on her old ivory teeth. When he turned back with his net, her entire body, such as it was, had come to the surface and was hanging from the tip of his kayak with her long front tooth. Ah! Cried the man, and his heart fell into his knees. His eyes hid in terror on the back of his head, and his ears blazed bright red. Ah! He screamed, and knocked her off the prow of his oar, began paddling like a demon tow shoreline, and not realizing she was tangled in his line, he was frightened all the more, for she appeared to stand upon her toes while chasing him all the way to shore. No matter which way he zigged his kayak, she stayed right behind him, and her breath rolled over the water in clouds of steam, and her arms flayed out as though to snag him down into the depth. Ah! He wailed as he ran aground. In one leap, he was out of his kayak, clutching his fishing stick, and running, the coral white corpse of skeleton woman still snagged in the fishing line. Bumpity bump, right behind him. Over the rocks he ran, and she followed. Over the frozen tundras he ran, and she kept right up on him. Over the meat laid out to dry he ran, cracking it to pieces as his mucklucks bore down. Through it all she kept right up, in fact grabbed some of the frozen fish as she was dragged behind. This she began to eat, for she had not gorged in a long, long time. Finally, the man reached his snow house and dove right into the tunnel, and on hands and knees scrabbled his way into the interior. Panting and sobbing, he lay there in the dark, his heart a drum, a mighty drum. Safe at last. Oh, so safe. Yes, safe. Thank the gods. Raven, yes. Thank ravens. Yes, all bound. Sedna, safe. Ah, last. Imagine when he lit his whale oil lamp, and there it lay in a tumble upon his snow floor, one heel over her shoulder, one knee inside her ribcage, one foot over her elbow. He could not say later what it was. Perhaps the firelight softened her features, or the fact that he was a lonely man. But a feeling of some kindness came into his breath, and slowly he reached out his grimy hands, and using words softly like a mother to a child, began to untangle her from the fishing line. Oh, na. He untangled the toes. Oh, na. On and on he worked into the night, until dressing her in furs to keep her warm, skeleton woman's bones were all in the order a human should be. He felt into his leather cuffs for his flint, and used some of his hair to light a little more fire. He gazed at her from time to time as he oiled the precious wood of his fishing stick and removed the gut light. And she in the furs uttered not a word. She did not dare, lest this hunter take her out and throw her down to the rocks and break her bones to pieces utterly. The man began to be drowsy, slid under his sleepiness skins, and soon was dreaming. And sometimes, as humans sleep, a tear escaped from the dreamer's eye. We never know what sort of dream causes this, but we know it is either a dream of sadness or longing, and this is what happened to the man. The skeleton woman saw the tear glimmer in the firelight, and she became suddenly so thirsty. She tinkled and clanked and crawled over to the sleeping man and put her mouth to his tear. The single tear was like a river, and she drank and drank and drank until her many young years' thirst was slacked. While lying beside him, she reached inside the sleeping man and took out his heart, the mighty drum. She sat up and banged on both sides of it. Boom, boom, boom. As she drummed, she began to sing, flesh, flesh, flesh. And and the more she sang, the more her body filled out with flesh. She sang for hair, for good eyes and nice fat hands. She sang the divide between her legs and breasts long enough to wrap for warmth and all the things a woman needs. And when she was all done, she also sang the sleeping man's cloth off and crept into his bed. And with him, again, skin to skin, she returned the great drum, his heart, to his body. And that is how they awakened, wrapped one around the other, tangled their might in another way, in a good and lasting way. The people who could not remember how she came to be, first ill fortune, say she and the fishermen went away and were constantly well fed by the creatures she had all known all her life under the water. The people say that it is true, and that is all they know. Death in the house of love. Inability to face and untangle the skeleton woman is what causes many love relationships to fail. To love, one must not only be strong, but wise. Strength comes from the spirit. Wisdom comes from skeleton woman. As we see in the table, if one wishes to be fed for life, one must face and develop a relationship with the life, death, life, nature. When we have that, we are no longer bumbling along fishing for fantasies, but we are made wise about the necessary deaths and startling births that create true relationships. When we face skeleton woman, we learn that passion is not something to go get, but rather something generated in cycles and given out. It is skeleton woman who demonstrates that a shared living together through all increases and decrease, through all endings and beginnings, is what creates an unparalleled love of devotion. The story is an apt metaphor for the problem of modern love, the fear of the life, death, life, nature, the death aspect in particular. In much of the Western culture, the original character of the death nature has been covered over by various dogmas and doctrines until it is split off from its other half, life. We have erroneously been trained to accept a broken form of one of the most profound and basic aspects of the wild nature. We have been taught that death is always followed by more death. It is simply not so. Death is always in the process of incubating new life, even when one's existence has been cut down to the bones. Rather than seeing the archetype of death and life as opposites, they must be held together as the left and right side of a single thought. It is true that within a single love relationship there are many endings, yet somehow and somewhere in the delicate layers of the being that is created when two people love one another, there is both a heart and a breath. While one side of the heart empties, the other fills. When one breath runs out, another begins. If one believes that the life, death, life force has no stanza beyond death, it is no wonder some humans are frightened of commitment. They are terrified to go through even one ending. They cannot bear to pass from the veranda into the inner rooms. They are fearful, for they sense that there is in the breakfast room of the house of love sits Lady Death, tapping her toe, folding and refolding her gloves. Before her is a work list of one side of what is living, on the other what is dying. She means to carry through. She means to maintain a balance. The archetype of the life, death, life force is grossly misunderstood through many modern cultures. Some no longer understand that Lady Death is loving and that life will be renewed through her ministrations. In many folklore, she receives much sensational press that she carries a scythe and harvests the unexpected, that she kisses her victim and leaves their corpses scattered behind her, or that she drowns them and then wails long into the night. But in the other cultures, such as East Indian and Mayan, which takes much more care to teach about the wheel of life and death, Lady Death enfolds the already dying, easing their pain, giving them comfort. She is said to turn the baby in the womb to the head-first position so it can be born. She is said to guide the hand of the midwife to open the pathways of the mother's milk in the breast, as well as to comfort anyone who weeps alone. Rather than vilifying her, those who know her in full cycle respect her largesse and her lessons. Archetypally, life, death, life, nature is a basic component of the instinctive nature. This is personified through world myth and folklore as Dama del Muerta, Lady Death, Kulita Irberka Quen Yin Baba Yaga, Lady in White, Compassionate Nightshade, and a group of women called by the Greek races the Grey Ladies. From the Banshees in her carriage made of night cloud to La Llorona, the weeping woman at the river. From the dark angel who brushes humans with a wingtip, collapsing them into ecstasy, to swamp fire that appears when death is imminent. Stories are filled with these remnants of the old life, death, life goddess personification. Much of our knowledge of the life, death, life's nature is contaminated by our fear of death. Therefore, our ability to move with the cycles of the life, death, life nature is quite frail. These forces do not do something to us. They're not thieves who rob us of the things we cherish. This nature is not a hit and run driver who smashes what we value. No. The life, death, life forces are part of our own nature, an inner authority that keeps the steps, knows the dance of life and death. It is composed of the parts of ourselves who knows when something can, should, and must be born and when it must die. It is a deep teacher if we can only learn its tempo. Rosario Castellanos, the Mexican mystic and ecstatic poet, writers about surrender to the forces that govern life and death. Give me the death I need. Poets understand that there is nothing of value without death. Without death, there are no lessons. Without death, there is no dark for the diamond to shine from. While those who are initiated are unafraid of Lady Death, the culture often encourages that we throw skeleton woman over the cliffs, for not only is she fearsome, it takes not long to learn her ways. A soulless world encourages faster, quicker thrashing, about to find the one filament that seems to be the one that shall burn forever and right now. However, the miracle we are seeking takes time to find it, time to bring it to life. The modern search for perpetual motion machine rivals the search for a perpetual love machine. It is not surprising that people trying to love become confused and harried. And as Hans Christian Andersen's story, the Red Shoes dance a mad dance, unable to stop the frantic jig and whirl right past things they, in their deepest hearts, cherish more. Yet there is another way, a better way, which takes into account human foibles, fears, and quirks, and as so often happens in the cycles of individuation, most of us just stumble over it. The first phase of love, the accidental finding of treasure. It's all it takes. There is material that can be understood as a mirror reflecting the illness or the well-being of one's inner life. Also, in tales, there are mythic themes that can be understood as describing stages of and instructions for maintaining balance in both inner and outer worlds. While we would interpret the skeleton woman story as a representation of the movements within a single psyche, I find this tale most valuable when understood as a series of 7 tasks that teach one soul to love another deeply and well. These are discovering another person as a kind of spiritual treasure, even though one may not at first realize what one has found. Next, in most loving relationship comes the chase and the hiding, a time of hope and fears for both. Then comes the untangling and understanding of the life, death, life aspect of the relationship and the compassion for the task. Next comes the relaxing into trust, the ability to rest in the presence and goodwill of the other. And after that, a time of sharing both future dreams and past sadness, these being the beginnings of healing archaic wounds with regards to love. And finally, the use of the heart to sing up new life and the intermingling of body and soul. The first task, the finding of treasure, is found in dozens of tales throughout the world that describe the catching of a creature from beneath the sea. When this occurs in the narrative, we always know that a big struggle will soon take place between what lives in the topside world and what lives or has been repressed in the underworld. In this tale, the fisherman snags more than he ever expected, Oh, it's a big one, he thinks as he turns to gain his net. Yet he does not realize that he is bringing up the scariest treasure he will ever know, that he is bringing up more than he can handle. He does not know that he will have to come to terms with it, that he is about to have all his powers tested, and worse, he does not know that he does not know. And that is the state of all lovers. At the beginning, they are blind as bats. Humans who do not know any better have the proclivity to approach love in the same way the fisherman in the story approaches the hunt. Ah, I hope I get a big one that will feed me for a long time to come, one that will excite me, make my life easier, one that will brag about me to all the other hunters back home. This is the natural progression of the naive or famished hunter. The very young, the uninitiated, the hungry, and the wounded have values that resolve around the finding and the winning of trophies. The very young truly do not know what they are seeking, yet the hungry seek substance and the wounded seek consolidation for previous losses, and yet all will have a treasure happen upon them. When one is in the company of the great powers of the psyche, in this case the life woman, one is naive, then one is sure to get more than one is fishing for. So often we entertain the fantasy of being fed from the deep nature through a love affair, a job, or by money, and we hope these feelings will last for a long time. We would like not to do any further work. In truth, I love that. In truth, there are even times when we would like to be fed without doing much work at all. In reality, we know nothing of value ever develops this way, but we wish it anyway. The runner, the chaser. When will he come back? When will she come back? To lay inert and only dreaming of a perfect love is easy. It is an anesthesiation from which we might never recover, but for ruthlessly snagging something valuable yet outside of our awareness. For the naive and wounded, the miracle of the psyche's way is that even if you are half-hearted, irreverent, didn't mean to, didn't really hope to, don't want to, feel unworthy to, aren't ready for it, and you will accidentally stumble upon treasure anyway. Then it is your soul's work to not overlook what has been brought up, to recognize treasure as treasure, no matter how unusual its form, and to consider carefully what to do next. The fisherman motive shares some archetypal symbolism with the hunter, and these represent, among many things, the psychological elements of humans that seek to know, that strive to nourish self through merging with the instinctual nature. In stories as in life, the hunter and the fisherman begin their quest in one of the three ways: in a sacred, mean-spirited, or bumbling manner. In the skeleton woman story, we can see that the fisherman is a little on the bumbling side. He is not mean-spirited, but he does not exactly have sacred attitude or intention either. Sometimes lovers begin this way too. At the beginning of a relationship, they are only fishing for a little excitement or a little help to make me a through-the-night antidepressant. Without realizing it, they uninvitingly enter a part of their own and the other person's psyche in which skeleton woman resides. While their egos may be fishing for fun, this psychical space is sacred ground for skeleton woman. If we troll these waters, we are guaranteed to hook her for certain. The fisherman thinks he is pursuing simple nourishment and nurture, when in fact he is bringing up the entire elemental feminine nature, the neglected life nature. It cannot be overlooked, for wherever new life begins, the death queen shows up, and when this occurs, at least for the moment, people pay rapt and fearful attention. In motive, skeletal woman is similar to Sedna, another life figure from Inuit mythology. Sedna is the great deformed creature goddess who lives in the Inuit underworld. Sedna's father threw her over the edge of his kayak, for unlike other dutiful daughters of the tribe, she had run off with a dog man. Like the father in the fairy tale The Handless Maiden, Sedna's father chopped off her hands. Her fingers and limbs sank to the bottom of the sea, where they became fish and seals and other life forms that sustained the Inuit ever after. What was left of Sedna also sank on the bottom of the sea. There she became all bones and long, long hair. And an Inuit rite, earthbound shamans swim down to her, bringing peace food to quiet her snarling dog husband and guardian. The shamans comb her long, long hair while singing to her, begging her to heal the soul or body of a person above. For she is a great Angok, magician. She is the great northern gate of life and death. Skeleton woman who spent an eon lying under the water can also be understood as a woman disguised and misused life, death, life force. In her vital resurrection form, she governs the intuitive and emotive ability to complete the life cycles of birthing and endings, grieving and celebration. She is the one who peers at things. She can tell when it is time for a place, a thing, an act, a group, or a relationship to die. This gift, this psychological sensitivity, awaits those who would lift her to consciousness through the act of loving another. A part of every woman and every man resists knowing that in all love relationships, death must have her share. We pretend we can love without our illusions about love dying. Pretend we can go on without our superficial expectations dying. Pretend we can progress and that our favorite flushes and rushes will never die. But in love, psychically, everything becomes picked apart. Everything. The ego does not want to be it so, yet it is how it is meant to be, and the person of a deep and wildish nature is undeniably drawn to the task. What dies? Illusion dies, expectation dies, greed for having it all, for wanting to have all the beautiful, all this dies because love always causes a descent into the death nature. We can see why it takes abundant self-power and soullessness to make that commitment. When one commits to love, one also commits to the revivification of skeleton woman in all her teachings. The fisherman in the story is slow to realize the nature of what he has caught. This is true of everyone at first. It is hard to realize what you are doing when you are fishing in the unconscious. If you are inexperienced, you do not know that down these lives, the death nature, once you find out what you are dealing with, your impulse is to throw her back. We become like the fathers who throw their wild daughters out of the kayak into the sea. We know that relationships sometimes falter when they move from the anticipatory stage to the stage of facing what is really on the end of one's hook. This is true of the relationships between a mother and her 18-month-old baby, as that between parents and their teenagers, as between friends, as that between lovers of a lifetime or just a little time. The relationships in all goodwill flaps and sways and sometimes staggers, and when the sweetheart stage is over, then instead of enacting a fantasy, the more challenging relationships begin in earnest, and all one's craft and wisdom must be called into action. The skeleton woman who lies under the water is an inert form of deep, instinctual life which knows by heart the creation of life, the creation of death. If lovers insist on life of forced gaiety, perpetual pleasuramas, and other forms of deadening intensity, if they insist on sexual donner umblitz, thunder and lightning, or torrent of the delectable, and no strife at all, there goes the life, death, life, nature right over the cliff, drowned in the sea again. Refusing to allow all cycles of life, death, life in love, relationships, causes the skeleton nature to be ripped from their psychic lodgings and drowned. Then the love relationships takes on a strain. Let it never be sad. Let it never have fun. Let it always have fun. Face to be maintained in all cost. The soul of the relationship sinks out of sight, set to drift underwater, scentless and useless. This is an incredible analogy because this is exactly what has to happen in twin flame separation. In other words, there are pockets of you walk with your beloved, and then suddenly it collapses. It collapses because it has to collapse because you're working under an archaic rules of engagement. And so one or both of you explode or implode, or a separation is performed angelically through power. So there's no fight, but it's just a separation. It's almost like chess pieces have been moved and you're like, how the hell did we just separate? And so the death comes of this relationship at this point, because now there's silence, or there's no longer union in physical or connection, talking. And then suddenly you guys come up again. So that's the life, death, life cycle that most people bemoan. They refuse it. Hang on for a quick second. Okay, so let me continue. Skeleton woman is always thrown over the cliff when one or both lovers cannot stand her or understand her. She is thrown over the cliff when we misapprehend the use of transformative cycles, when things must die and be replaced by others. If lovers cannot stand these life, death, life processes, they cannot love one another over beyond hormonal aspirations. Did you get that? That's big. Throwing the life, death, life nature over the cliff always causes the woman lover and the soulful force in men to become a skeleton bereft of a genuine love or nourishment. As a woman is a keeper of cycles, the life, death, life cycles are the center of her concern, since there can be little new life without a decline in that which has gone previously. Lovers who insist on attempting to keep everything at a psyche scintillating peak will spend their days in an increasingly ossified relationship. The desire to force love to live on in its most positive form only is what causes love ultimately to fall over dead, and for good. Did you guys get that? So love has four sides. It's seasonal. There's four seasons to it. The fisherman challenges is to face Lady Death, embrace her life and death cycles, unlike other tales in which an underwater creature is captured but then released, thereby granting the fisherman a wish in gratitude. Lady Death is not letting go. Lady Death is not graciously granting any wishes. She surfaces, like it or not, for without Lady Death there can be no real knowledge of life, and without that knowing there can be no fealty, no real love or devotion. Love costs. It costs bravery. It costs going to distance, as we shall see. It's incredible and true, because what happens is that when a twin is met with a twin that may not be as aligned, that twin flame is Lady Death or Gentleman Death. And something happens to the other twin facing this, what should have been just nectar, and suddenly is faced with tsunamis of emotions crashing against their heart chakra, crashing against their consciousness of what is their sense of reality. And so that's why, and so you go through that process of regenerating yourself on a new platform of consciousness. I see a phenomenon time and again in lovers, regardless of gender. It goes something like this. Two people begin a dance to see if they would care to love one another. Suddenly, skeleton woman is accidentally hooked. Something in the relationship begins diminishing and slides into entropy. Often the painful pleasure of sexual excitement is abating, or one sees the other's frail, injured underside, or sees the other as not quite trophy material. That's when the bald and yellow-toothed old girl rises to the surface. It seems so gruesome, yet this is the premier time when there is a real opportunity to show courage and to know love. To love means to stay with it. It means to emerge from a fantasy world into a world where sustainable love is possible, face to face, bones to bones, a love of devotion. To love means to say when every cell says run. When lovers are able to tolerate the life, death, life's nature, when they are able to understand it at a continuum, as a night between 2 days, and as the forces that create a love that endures a lifetime, they are able to face the skeleton woman in the relationship Then together they are strengthened, and both are called to deeper understanding of the two worlds they live in. One, the mundane world, the other, the spirit world. During my 20 years of practice, men and women have burrowed into my sofa, saying with happy terror, I met someone. I didn't mean to. I was just minding my own business. I wasn't looking. And wham, I met this someone with a capital S. Now what am I going to do? As they continue to nurture the new relationship, they begin to cower. They shrink. They worry. Are they having love anxiety over this person? No, they are feeling fearful because they are beginning to glimpse a bald skull rising from beneath the waves of their passion. Aye, what shall they do? I tell them, this is magic time. It does a little to calm them. I tell them we see something wonderful. They have little faith. I tell them to hold on, and this they are able to do, but barely. Before I know it, from the viewpoint of the analyst, the little boat of their love relationship is rowing faster and faster. It careens into shore, and before you can say jackrabbit, they are running for their lives. And an analyst, I am running along beside them, trying to put a word in while guess who bumpity bump along behind. For most, when first confronting skeleton woman, the impulse is to run like the wind and as far away as possible. Even running is part of the process. It is only humans to do so, but not for long and not forever. Isn't that amazing? You guys want me to continue? It's pretty amazing, right? So there you go. The runner chaser concept. The chase and the hiding. Okay. Okay, so this is the chase and the hiding. The death nature has an odd habit of surfacing in love affairs just as the time we feel we have won over a lover. Just as we feel we have landed a big fish. That's when life, death, life, nature surfaces and scares everyone sideways. That is when more contortions go on about why love cannot, will not, should not work for either party concerned. That is where all the diving into the burrows is done. It is an effort to become invisible. Invisible to the lover? No. Invisible to skeleton woman. That is what all the running and hiding is about. But, as we see, there's nowhere to hide. Rational psyche goes fishing for something deep, and not only lands it, but is so shocked it can barely stand it. Lovers have a sense that something is chasing them. Sometimes they think it is the other who is doing the chasing. In reality, it is skeleton woman. At first, when we learn to truly love, we must understand many things. We think she is chasing us when in fact our intentions to release to another human being in a special way is what hooks skeleton woman, so she cannot escape from us. Whether love is nascent, the life, death, life force will always surface. Always. So here are the fisherman and the skeleton woman all tangled up with each other. As skeleton woman bumps along behind the terrified fisherman, she begins a primitive participation in life. She becomes hungry and eats dried fish. Later, as she comes even more to life, she will quench her thirst with the fisherman's tears. We see this odd phenomenon in all love affairs. The faster he runs, the more she picks up speed. When one or the other lover attempts to run from the relationship is paradoxically invested with more life. And the more life that it creates, the more frightened the fisherman becomes. And the more he runs, the more life is created. This phenomenon is one of life's central tragic comedies. One person in such a situation dreamed of meeting a woman lover whose soft body opened like a cabinet. Inside her body cavity were embryos shining and throbbing, daggers on shells dripping with blood, and bags packed with the first green color of spring. The dreamer was given great pause, for this was a dream about life, death, life, nature. These glimpses into the interior of skeleton woman caused the lovers in training to seize their fishing sticks and hie across the land at breakneck speed in an effort to put as much distance as possible between themselves and her. Skeleton woman is great and mysterious. She is dazzlingly numinous. Psychically, she stretches from one horizon to another horizon and from heaven to hell. She is much to embrace, yet it is no wonder people run to embrace her. What one fears can strengthen, can heal. The running and hiding phase is a time during which lovers try to rationalize their fear of the life-death life cycle of love. They say, I can do better with someone else, or I don't want to give up my fill in the blank, or I don't want to change my life, or I don't want to face my wounds or anyone else's, or I'm not ready yet, or I don't want to be transformed without first knowing in absolute detail what I will look like, feel like afterwards. It is a time when thoughts are all jumbled together, when one makes a desperate dive for shelter and the heart beats not from cherishing and being cherished as much as from abject terror. To be trapped by Lady Death, aye, the horror of meeting the life-death-life force face to face, double aye. Some make the mistake of thinking that they are running away from relationships with the lover. They are not. They're not running away from love or the pressures of relationship. They're trying to outrun the mysterious life-death-life force. Psychology diagnoses this as fear of intimacy, fear of commitment. But those are only symptoms. The deeper issue is one of misbelief and distrust. Those who run away forever fear to truly live according to the cycles of the wild nature. So here the death woman chases the man across water, across the boundary of the unconscious to the conscious landmass of the mind. The conscious psyche becomes aware of what it has caught and tries desperately to outrun it. We do this constantly in our lives. Sometimes fearsome raises its head. We aren't paying attention and keep pulling it up, thinking it's some booty. It's a trove, but not the kind we've imagined. It's a treasure we've unfortunately been taught to fear. So we attempt to run away or throw it back or prettily and make it what it is not. But it will not work. Eventually, we all have to kiss the hag. The same process follows in love. We only want beauty but wind up facing the baddie instead. We push skeleton woman away, but she proceeds. We run, she follows. She is the great teacher we have been saying we want. No, not this teacher, we shriek. We want a different one. Too bad, this is the teacher everyone gets. There's a saying that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. This means the teacher comes when the soul, not the ego, is ready. The teacher comes when the soul calls, and thank goodness for the ego is never fully ready anyway. If you were solely up to the ego's readiness to draw the teacher to us, we would remain essentially teacherless for life. We are blessed since the soul's continuous transmitting its desire regardless of the ever-changing opinions of our ego. People fear that when things become tangled and frightening in love relationships that the end is near. But this is not so. Because this is an archetypal manner and because skeleton woman does the work of fate, the hero is supposed to take off across the horizon. The death woman is supposed to come right along behind the lover in training, is supposed to dive into his little hut and gasp and choke and hope he is safe, and skeleton woman is supposed to follow him right into his safe haven. He's supposed to untangle her and so forth. For modern lovers, the idea of taking space is like a fisherman's little snow house where he thinks he is safe. Sometimes this fear of confronting the death nature is distorted into begging off, trying to keep only the pleasurable sides of the relationship, going without dealing with skeleton woman that will never work. It causes lovers who have not taken space immense anxiety, for they themselves are willing to meet skeleton woman. They have primed themselves. They have reinforced themselves. They are attempting to keep their fears balanced. And now, just as they are ready to untangle this mystery, just as one or the other is about to drum on the heart and sing up a life together, one lover cries, "No, not yet, not yet, no, not ever." There is a vast difference between the need for solitude and renewal and the desire to take space to avoid the inevitable intercourse with skeleton woman. But intercourse, meaning exchanging with and acceptance of life, death, life, nature, is the next step in order to strengthen one's ability to love. Those who enter into relationships with her will gain an enduring skill for love. Those who won't. There's no way around it. All the not readies, all the I need time are understandable, but only for a short while. The truth is that there is never completely ready. There is never a really right time. And as with any descent to the unconscious, there comes a time when one might simply hope for the best, pinches one's nose and jumps into the abyss. If this were not so, we would not have needed to create the words heroine, hero, or courage. The work of learning, the life, death, life, nature has to be done. Put off, skeleton woman sinks beneath the water but will rise again and again and again and give chase again and again. It is her work to do this. It is our work to learn. If one wishes to love, there is no getting around it. The work of embracing her is a task. Without a task that challenges, there could be no transformation. Without a task, there is no real sense of satisfaction. To love pleasure takes little. To love truly takes a hero who can manage his own fear. Granted, many people come to this escape and hide stage. Some unfortunately arrive here and over again. The entrance to this barrow is rutted with all the scramblings, but those who care to love emulate the fishermen. They strive to fight, to light the fire and face the life, death, life, nature. They contemplate what they fear and paradoxically respond with both conscience and wonder. Wow. There's a lot more. Like, this is like, and again, it's, I'm not going to read it anymore because I'm getting cross-eyed, but it's, again, by the way, 23 is the number of people who are here. One of the greatest books ever written. Okay, there are two books. One is called Iron John by Robert Bly, excuse me. And the woman's book is, what I just read from, is Women Who Run with the Wolves. This is a book that women give to each other. This is a book my twin read, actually, come to think of it. He read the whole entire book because he wanted to understand me. And so if you want to understand the myths and stories of wild woman archetype, and if you want to understand as a man, actually, Polly, and other men out there who might be listening, you might be the only unicorn out here, by the way. If you want to understand your own feminine psyche of what has created you in this incarnation as a man, that is a book to read. And for you women, go get Iron John so you can understand that too. You're welcome, Polly. Thank you for being always such a gentleman and such a light. Appreciate you. Excuse me. Any comments? I know this is late for many of you, and happy holidays, whatever you celebrate. And let us pause for a moment and turn our attention to Gaza and to the Palestinian people and try to share this energy with them of transmuting what's happening to them so that they can have their land and they can thrive, and to see olive grows and wine grows and beauty of their beautiful culture and their beautiful hearts and their beautiful courage. If you could take a moment, either now, and if you want, we can do that now for like a minute, and closing your eyes and giving them abundance, because what happens to a brother and sister if you never meet them happens to you. Okay, thank you. If you could just give a moment and just see them thriving. See the awakening of the planet. See infrastructures that no longer serve us being replaced by systems of beauty and kindness and abundance that is seemingly replaced. So that every human being on this planet thrives, lives in abundance. There is no reason for any 1%. We do not need this system. And the beauty of your souls is that many of you, all of you listening right now, are not greedy. You are abundant and you are very grateful. And all you want is peace and love and nourishment for Pachamama, planet Earth. And what you want, the Palestinians want for themselves. So please visualize that. Visualize that as a global birthright for everyone. Hari Paratman Allah Haud Maasgad Yastanho Hari Paratman Allah Haud Maasgad Yastanho Hari Paratman Allah Haud Maasgad Yastanho Hari Paratman Allah Haud Maasgad Yastanho. So that's the 7 names of God. The 7 names of God, which you can look up on YouTube by Meher Baba, and use that. The 7 names of God. They include all the names you can, there's many more names, but that starts it. Anyway, I'm so happy you guys are here. I want to leave you with the books I read for you tonight so that you guys can look it up. One of the books is called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. The second book is called Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Estes. And all you have to do is type in The Prophet Gibran, Gibran. That's all you have to do on Google. And Women Who Run with the Wolves, that's all you need. But if you want the last name, Estes, Estes. Okay? Estes. That's it. That's all you need. And you will find these books, and every one of you should have these in the library. This killed me. This is exactly what I'm going through totally, and he's a fisherman. Yes, he is. Run, run, run. And love is a shamanic journey. It sure in the hell is. Love takes courage. I'm sorry. Love takes courage, because if you can't love, and I love how she wrote about how wolves are I love how she wrote about wolves. And their incredible loyalty to each other through strife, and how they mate for life, and how they take death in stride. In fact, they're not victimized by it, but they do love. You know that, right? Wolves have souls. All animals have souls. They all want to live. They all want to be in peace. They all want to, they're just, some of them, some animals are carnivores and some are herbivores, but they all want to live. It's one of the reasons why I'm a vegetarian, for me personally. And what you do is your business. But in this, when she starts talking about the wolves and how they have a whole system in place, and one of the things that they do understand is death, the life, death, life cycle. They know it, they understand it, they take it in stride, they go with it. They just go with it. I love like a wolf, it hits home, yes. And very few people mate for life. There are only birds of prey that mate for life, for the most part, and wolves mate for life. And quite often, most other animals don't, okay? Lions don't, horses don't, and so on. But there's something magical, and it's weird how wolves were hunted down and maligned. Isn't that weird? The pure atrocity of how wolves were. In fact, it's one of the reasons why there's certain types of wolves we don't have anymore. Me too, I became vegan because of the soul of our animal companions. Yes, me too. I mean, it wasn't about my health. I didn't do it for health, to be honest. I did it out of just, and sometimes you lose your way. You fall off the wagon and you start eating meat again, chicken, whatever. And you say, I eat chicken, I eat fish, whatever. I get it. But this time around, I've been a vegetarian for 15 years straight. Before that, I was a vegetarian from the time I was 18 into my late 20s. And then, life, it just started out with fish and it just went down the hill after that. But veganism is the ultimate, that's for damn sure. I was my best shape ever when I was a vegan, my best ever. So trust me, there's something there about that. Any other comments? I'm so glad you guys held on. And I want to wish you all such blessings in this time. And I want to commend you for being who you are, for being a light in the world. And I want to give you, I give you a message. The message is that you are enough. You are ready. And that perfection is your jailer. Don't do anything that keeps you from breaching through the walls of perfection. There is no perfection. So put things out there, okay? Put your work out there. I will quickly tell you a story of my first publishing. Quickly. I was writing an erotic story, and it was a past life story that I had written. And the tenses, the verbiage, in other words, my verbs, it was fucking all over the place. But the story itself was sound, actually. And I remember the publishers got the story, called me and said, look, the grammar's horrible, but we love the fucking story. Because I sent it, I was like, fuck it, I'm sending it. I don't give a shit. I can't keep doing this. I can't. I was working a job. I was, Anyway, and the story wasn't changed. It just made sure that the grammar was correct and the punctuation, and boom, it was published. And I ended up winning an award. Here's what the story is. It's not a flex. It's the fact that sometimes if it's meant to be published, it'll be published no matter what. Jack Kerouac wrote On the Road on one ass long piece of paper, butcher paper, okay? And that's how he sends it to this publisher. I wouldn't recommend this today because most publishers today are lazy, but in those days, if your work was great, it was great and they didn't give a fuck. But what I will say is that you can self-publish, you can do a lot of things, and don't let perfection stop you from coming out of the gate and getting shit done, okay? Perfection is actually an excuse not to release your work. Perfection is an excuse not to step into your light. Perfection is actually an excuse. It's a form of cowardice, no offense. You can always polish it later, but if you got good work, just put it out there and do what you gotta do, okay? All right, I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. Sending you much love on your journey.